G'day C3 parents, I'm your host Karien Pitout. Join us on this conversation regarding parenting and adoption. Joining me is Alexa Russell-Matthews, a social worker for the Rice family.
Name one, Lars, this is a fun question. Name one thing that you said you would never do as a parent until you became a parent.
Oh.
Only one. You only one.
One.
List.
Screen time. It would have to be using screen time so that I could get some work done. Like, I never wanted to do that. When my oldest was little, I didn't work. I only went back to work when he was 18 months old. And then we hit some very hard financial times and I had to go back to work. And I was working on content, so I needed chunks of time to be able to write. And my son, my oldest, is in the 5 o'clock wake up club, sometimes 4:30 wake up club. Sometimes I get him snooze till 5:30. So working at night has never been a real option for me because I need to go to bed earlier for me to survive and for my family to survive intact without grumpy mom. And so there were days, this was before my youngest arrived, that he had like double, triple the amount of screen time that in our house would be a normal thing at all. Because no, that was something I didn't want. And I must be honest, until he was 2.5, we were really strict about it, other than when he was sick in hospital as a baby and we just had music playing in the background. But that day that I did that, I just remember sitting there thinking, what am I doing? Like, I've compromised everything I stand for. And I was like, no, actually you haven't. You are working to feed your family and this is a choice that you've got to make right now. And he's sitting next to you. It's not like he was far away and I was in a different room. Like, we were both busy. But I just, that day I was like, can't believe I just did that. It sounds like a random thing. And I'm sure there are lots of moms who are looking at me thinking like, really? That's your big thing?
There's a vast
that was my big
of parenting guilt created and generated around screen time. If you go and look at how it is judged, because ours was also, we always said, now kids won't have a tablet until they're in their teens and all of that. And then we ran into this thing where this kid doesn't want to eat, and we finally figured out, the tablet and the TV will actually keep him occupied so we can give, again. So he got a tablet at the age of 2. Because that's the only way we could get him to eat. And the amount of guilt I felt for stepping into that, compromising into that. And, in your head, that this is the best decision you're making for your family. But in your heart, there's just a little kernel of almost blame you give yourself in the whole process. And it took me a while to reach the point of, what? We have to make sacrifices on our ideals and things, and that is one of the things that I've learned from my kids is the ability to compromise in a far more gracious way than what I used to be able to do.
I think that's definitely, and also what we do with our first children and our second children or third or fourth children are always going to be slightly different. And I think that's had to be part of my reality. And also, I think the other part of it is, even if you and your partner agree on your parenting approach, how you implement those things sometimes are not the same. And to figure that out I often joke and say I find marriage harder sometimes than mothering. Because, with the children, I still get to be in charge. I cannot be in charge of my spouse. So, and when I forget that, it causes other horrible consequences. Because I would like to be in charge, but thankfully I'm not. And thankfully he doesn't let me just be in charge, because then it gets very resentful. But I just think, so I think that's probably been our thing that we've had to, my husband and I have had to figure out how to compromise on so that we can actually make things happen. So it's that screen time thing. Still not crazy about it, I won't lie, but I also recognize that, especially now during Corona as well, there's a brilliant Glennon Doyle clip, which I'm sure you've seen, where she goes, no more self-guilting yourselves, moms. Like, this is what you need to survive, and this is what you need. And in terms of screen time, while we're busy doing this, Isaac is busy watching Jonathan Hines Under the Sea, which is all about sharks, which is his big interest. And he's been bringing facts to me, and about whip corals and leopard seals. And so bath times now are him snorkeling, because that's his current interest. And so I look at that and I just think, actually, we can use screen time effectively in this current state. We are emergency schooling our children, those of us that are not homeschoolers. And my son is under the age of 6. So he's supposed to, as far as I'm concerned, should be learning through play. Like worksheets do not work in my house. So when he's with that snorkel, he's practicing his breathing, he's doing some regulation, he's getting a whole lot of sensory input, but he's also exploring and using his imaginative play, which is where his emotional intelligence develops and his social skills develop. And so I look at all of that and I'm like, actually, this is a big one right now because there's a hidden curriculum going on, which he doesn't know, I know. And so that's the stuff that I think matters.
Chat, we've actually journeyed through adoption and gentle parenting and just our ups and our downs and had a couple of awesome laughs. In conclusion to this chat that we've had, what advice would you give from a social worker perspective to parents going through this COVID lockdown, but also for future parenting, because we're not going to permanently be in crisis parenting. We will eventually reach a point where we're not there.
So I think the first thing is to accept that we're not going to go back to life the way it was before COVID. COVID-19 has been this watershed moment for us as families, as communities, as a country in terms of how we live. And as much as we're yearning to go back to what was normal before, we can't go back there because of all the changes that have happened. We've had to assimilate, we've had to change, and we are busy adapting actually to a new way of being. That's going to be, even when the regulations lift, we're still going to have certain things in place for a long time. And so I think that's the first thing, is to actually recognize that requires that we are in this grief cycle that we referenced earlier. And I've got a lovely graphic that I'll send to you, Karien, that you can put up in the comments below as well. So I will send that below as well, just to talk through some of that and to remember that everybody is in that grief cycle. It doesn't matter how young our children are, how old our children are, how young we are, how old we feel right now in the midst of this. We are all on that at different points, and sometimes some people's anger and some people's sadness are going to clash. And so I think that's an important thing to remember. The other thing that I always say in response to that kind of question is that behavior, our children and our own, is driven by emotion. And if we aren't willing to figure out what's motivating the behavior, we can't actually deal with the heart of whatever's going on, which means that we might end up punitively reacting to ourselves, to our partners, to our children, rather than actually choosing to respond and to say, actually, what's going on here? What do we actually need to be doing here? Which moves us through the process a little bit quicker. And even if that process is uncomfortable, I'm thinking about kids who need to stamp their feet, you need to shout, you need to punch the ball, the pillow. Sometimes kids need to be allowed to be safe enough to pummel into us and us to deep pressure and snuggle into them. Sorry, it's a fluff thing. But is to be able to do that. And I think we can only do that when we're also looking after ourselves. So the last piece of advice I would give is, if you're watching this as a parent and maybe this has been your like respite pause time in the midst of all of this, and you watched it over 4 days because that's how you've had to do this, is to just make sure that you are also figuring out what is it you need to cope right now, you know, and what is it that you need to cope after this. So what are habits that you can acquire during this time? And not new habits, but sometimes it just means doing things differently. And a concrete example is I've taken social media off my phone. I only have it on my laptop so that I can quieten some of the noise in the background, because if I don't do that, I'm not coping. And so I know I need to move every day. What does that look like? Sometimes it's going for a run. In Cape Town, we've got 90 minutes of daylight time, which is going to get less and less as winter approaches. You know, unless they lift that 9 o'clock curfew for us, I've got to figure that out. So it's working out how to work with where we are. And once this is over, is recognizing that there are consequences we're going to live with for the next 5 to 10 years. Some of them are economic, some of them are social, but emotionally our children are growing up through something that none of us have. And so to be kind and generous to ourselves as well in our responses. Because if we can't be like that towards ourselves, we can't actually do that for our children. And so those are my parting sage words, such as they are.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. I really appreciate all the input that you give. I love you a lot, my friend, in any way. So I'm very fortunate that I have you as my friend. Every now and again, I know that I go look up some of the things that you post. I'm like, oh, okay, that's how we do things again. So it's awesome being in a friendship where we support each other and we actually journey together. Please stay safe. And continue the amazing work that you do at the Rise team and what you're doing for other families and helping people move forward through life. Once again, people, down below you will get information about a Rise family. Go support them. help them. They are currently also in the COVID drive raising funds for food drives and for electricity and for so many ways to help the community being impacted, almost receiving not just the brunt of the lockdown, but or have been receiving the brunt of the economic disparities that we are experiencing in our country. So please go support them. And please comment down below. Let us know what part of the conversation you joined. Would you like us to have another conversation? Where would you like us to expand, especially on the families that is looking at adoption and or going through the adoption process? If you want to reach out to Alexa, once again, you can contact Arise Family. She will be able to direct you in the direction in your province, or otherwise within the Cape region, Arise itself will help you through some awesome seminars and courses. Thank you. Yes, add. Yes.
So the other thing is also we have an Arise Family page on Facebook. And so if you go and join that page, you'll see what's going on. There's some exciting stuff happening. If you're considering adoption, if you are a family formed through adoption, the one spin-off from COVID is that we're going national with how we're presenting our support options. So we don't need to be in your city now because we just need to be behind a screen. So go and have a look at what's going on there. There's exciting news that will happen in the next 2 weeks. So I know there's different forums around adoption on Facebook already. There's lots of great groups, but go and join ours because we're another, if you want another voice, go and join ours. And now you've met me. I'm the Adoption Support and Education Manager for Arise. So go and have a look at what that is about and then see. And yeah, look at our social media, like us, follow us.
Go, guys. All right. And then if you like what we're doing at See Through Parenting, remember to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, comment down below, and we'll see you in the next installment. Thank you very much. Goodbye.